Have you ever dreamed about starting your own coffee shop? Maybe just don't know where to start. Maybe you've already opened up your own independent shop and are just looking for ways to better and more effectively manage it and scale it to multiple locations. In this two-part series episode, we're talking to Wes Herman. Since opening up their first location in 2002, Wes has been able to build a successful business of 19 coffee shops throughout the Pacific Northwest.
So the initial budget was $23,000 is what we needed to pull this business off.
Wes Herman is a lifelong entrepreneur. He bought his first business when he was just 21 years of age, and year to date, he's either started or acquired 7 more.
I always like to think that a business plan can be put on one sheet of paper. It's the difference between, just driving aimlessly without a map versus having a map and understanding where you're going to go.
In this video, we're going to share practical nuggets. Yeah, we're going to share some nuggets, all right? I'm just trying to figure out which nuggets we're going to share. But in this video, we're going to share some practical nuggets of advice for people looking to start a coffee shop business. We're also going to hear from Wes Herman's genius strategies of running a business successfully, scaling it, growing it. Things that you can apply not only to coffee shops, but any other business.
The really fun part is that we've got this bag lifter that allows one person to just lift it effortlessly and then put it over a bin, and we cut it and the beans fall right into the bin. And in terms of marketing, social media is big for us. All the standard stuff that you really have to do in a big corporation, even in our business, those are requirements, and that's how we attract the best. We didn't start with this big facility like this, and this is expensive. I mean, there's no doubt, that the point of entry here is probably $500,000 to get something like this rolling the way you want it to be.
YouTube rewards and promotes channels with a lot of engagement. So please help us grow in producing this amazing content for you by liking and commenting below. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so right now, this moment. Yes, this moment. Stay tuned, we've got an awesome episode coming up. Wes, it's good to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you for you and your investment of time. We appreciate that greatly. In a nutshell, in a couple minutes, give us an insight on how you started the coffee shop business and the events that led this business to be where it is today.
Wow, in only a couple minutes, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
I'll make it happen. So we were homeschooling 4 children, my wife and I was selling a product into the coffee industry, traveling the United States and seeing all the coffee shops everywhere. My kids were all drinking a ton of coffee, and we decided to teach them how to write a business plan around a coffee shop startup, and figuring if we could do this together, that maybe we'd end up with a long-term plan of having a business that would be family-oriented and last for a long time. So we did that, and 3 of the 4 kids are still in the business. 1 of the married-ins is in the business, and we've just had a great time kind of growing from those early days of 1 location, with the plan actually in place that we wrote that would be like multiple locations over a period of time to create generational wealth.
Wes, how much working capital does a coffee shop owner need to set aside?
Most entrepreneurs forget about working capital and the need for a reserve to get you through the beginning stages of when you start your business, which I assume that's kind of what you're asking about.
Correct.
In most people's case, they have to probably reserve enough money to get them through the first year to pay themselves. And then once that is done, the next year is probably really equally as complicated. But here's what I did. I worked for a good 5 years in another job so that I wasn't the drag on the company, and I was able to keep the money flowing into the company and able to make the company successful before I started drawing salary. So we actually got to store number 6 before I ever started earning money out of the company. and I worked another job during the day, and then at night I'd make all the deals and put these things together, and before you know it, we have 6 stores, and then I can quit my job and go do this.
So this is
a roastery. Yeah, come on in and let's take a look around. It's pretty fun to see. Yeah, this services all of our locations, but we're roasting coffee every day. So, it allows us to keep the freshest. We don't want to necessarily create lots of coffee and let it sit. So we want it to be very fresh. So that's the key to this roastery. And you can see right here, these are the bags of coffee that we get deliveries sometimes twice a week, and they come out of Seattle. And these then are taken into bins, and we take these bins right here and we put coffee in there, and we make a blend that is specific to whatever we're roasting. And so it's got a certain percentage of this bean and that bean. And then the really efficient thing we've done, which is kind of fun, and sorry for all the noise because we're roasting coffee. The really fun part is that we've got this bag lifter. And a lot of times what happens is these bags are so heavy that it takes 2 men to lift. My son actually designed and built this system that allows one person to just lift it effortlessly, and then put it over a bin, and we cut it, and the beans fall right into the bin.
What was your initial budget, and how did you finance those startup costs?
In those early days, which is almost 18 years ago now, or 18 years ago, we were on a very, very tight budget. We didn't have the money, and so we needed to find the money, and we needed to be creative on how we launched this first store. So the initial budget was $23,000 is what we needed to pull this business off. We didn't have the dough, so we went out and asked somebody to partner with us that had the money. And they weren't coffee drinkers, but they decided that this would be a good investment, and it was.
Did it seem like a lot 18 years ago to start with $23,000?
It probably was. It didn't seem like a lot. As I looked at other budgets and what other people were doing, they were spending a lot more money as well, but not, like infinitely. But you can see that from 18 years, just over the years, how much that has grown in terms of the cost to start a business. And it's, not only the cost of the infrastructure, the permitting, and everything else. It's the leases are more expensive, equipment's more expensive. Everything just costs a lot more money. Yeah.
So Wes, including all the costs in starting a coffee shop similar to this, what would someone need today, with where we are in economy, to get it started?
Oh, you'd probably need close to $500,000 or more.
$500,000?
Yeah.
You started with $23,000.
$23,000. Yeah.
18 years ago.
Yep.
And to do the same today, you're thinking $500,000.
Oh yeah, $500,000 is kind of like your point of entry. You can do some things that are a lot less money. If somebody wanted to put up a little drive-through shack, they can do that with a lot less money. But to do a full-blown store like we do, with all the stuff that goes into technology of the point of sale, the drive-through experience, headsets, and then the amazing equipment that we use to really give you that perfect cup of coffee.
How did you go about developing your menu, and how important is it? Walk us through the process, because that's important, isn't it?
It is super important. The look of your menu, what's on your menu, those are all items that are completely subjective. And as a coffee shop owner, you want to create something that maybe you like, but will the masses like it?
Right.
And so in our case, it was, developing something that had mass appeal and that people really were interested in. So we worked hard from day one to develop not only the standards of what people liked, but we were pulling from my experience of traveling the country. Prior to opening the coffee shop, I was traveling the country, selling a product into the coffee industry. So I got to see every coffee shop and look at all the various menus. And so I was bringing the best of what we had seen, because you've got your baseline drinks that everybody enjoys, and we can get creative on what a latte or an espresso drink will look like. But it's how can you make something creatively different in this space that attracts people and maybe attracts a different market segment than you're normally pulling. So that's what we do.
I'm just thinking about, our interview with Tim and Grace Lukens, Grace Harbor Farms, and you touched on that a little bit, is where he went out, looked at his competitors in the supermarkets, the local creameries and yogurts and et cetera, right? He took the highest priced one and priced his higher. It touches on another point, but it goes back to what you're saying, is we're not recreating the wheel. We're just taking what everybody else is doing and taking the best from it and making it better. You guys, if you haven't seen Grace Harbor Farms, and since I touched on that a little bit, I highly recommend check out our episodes. There's 2 series for that as well. Great story. Grace Harbor Farms, Tim and Grace Lukens. Wes, as far as expenses percentage-wise, can you walk us through what are the percentages of each location? You got payroll, you got supplies. Just a good way to see how it's all broken down.
Sure. One of the things we talked about was the aspects that are so important to every business, and that is, how do you control your cost of goods, how do you control your occupancy, and how do you control your labor? And so in our world, it's making sure that the occupancy costs are under 10%, and that the labor is under 30%, and that your cost of goods are probably somewhere 35 to 40%. And if you can do that and do it effectively, then you can probably make some money, but it's hard work to do.
So it leaves you with about a 25 to 30% margin.
Gross profit, and then you've got overhead and all the other stuff that goes along with that, and other business expenses. You can operate a small business very efficiently in coffee, and if you get a lot of customers, then you can make some serious dough.
So let's talk about a business plan. How important is it? How far into the future does one need to consider writing a business plan? Walk us through that a little bit, if you could.
It's probably the most critical thing you can do before you ever start what you're working on. I always like to think that a business plan can be put on one sheet of paper. And so with our training, with our own children in a homeschool setting, it was, okay guys, we're gonna get together and we're gonna write this business plan of how we start a coffee shop. And the idea of putting down on paper makes you think through the process, and it should never be like sentences and paragraphs. It should be more bullet points, and then actually hitting the idea, because you could write a book, right, and end up with 10 pages. You don't really need that. You just need to know, this is what I'm going to try and achieve, this is how we're going to do it, this is where I'm going to find the money, and this is the net result. And if you can do that and put it on paper, then and make it simple enough where you'll actually go back and revisit it, then you can revisit it every 6 months, every year, and then it becomes a part of who you are.
The issue, I think, just speaking from my own experience, is we overcomplicate things. And when we talk about a business plan, most people would think you're talking 20, 30 pages, it's got X, Y, Z. You're talking about a business plan on one page. One page.
You can have all kinds of backup information that is, spreadsheets and numbers, and to make it look like if you're going to go sell it to somebody and raise some money, it's probably not one page is going to do it. You're going to need to show some graphs and things like that. But the one-page document is really, what is the plan? It's the difference between, just driving aimlessly without a map versus having a map and understanding where you're going to go. You'll get there faster, you'll get there more directly, and you won't be distracted trying to figure out where you're supposed to be going.
Wes, as we're standing in really the center of all the activity, tell us a little bit about the process and some equipment, tips and tricks, where you learn to be lean, when you save money, when you save time. Walk us through that a little bit.
The key to lean is avoiding any wasted motion. And in our case, it's really important to have all of our equipment and the various processes we do all in the same place. So when a staff member goes from one store to the next, there is a seamless transition where they can just pick up and go and look at each piece of equipment, know where it is, how to operate. As you can see, there's a barista working right here in the background. If she went to another store, she could easily pick up and just do the same process at the same bar without having to familiarize herself. So that's one of the tips that we've, or one of the things we've done over the time.
So this setup is replicated throughout all your stores.
Yeah,
pretty
not
much.
exactly, because everything has a different setting. Every store is different in terms of where the windows are, how the space is laid out. But in terms of actual bar setup, where we are functioning with an espresso machine, a grinder, a knock box, and all the things that we do, it just needs to be familiar, and so that you can just move and motion and go from one thing to the next. And that's the key of going from one store to the other.
How much is salary and payroll?
Yeah, labor.
Yeah.
Direct store labor would be, something that we battle, and every business battles. I don't care if you're Starbucks or, some of the smaller mom and pops like us, we all battle the same thing. And that is, how do you control that labor, and how do you get it to within a percentage of 20, maybe to 25%? And some businesses are different, right? Our business just happens to be one that is labor intensive and requires kind of that percentage to stay in that range. Our optimum is if we can hire somebody who works full-time and has open availability, that's our prime candidate. To attract those people, we do a lot of different things. We not only pay a certain wage, and that is based on abilities, and but most people do start at a minimum wage.
Right.
The benefit in a coffee shop is you're making great tips, and so that kind of bridges a gap between what a minimum wage is and what people really want. And then we add in 401k, medical insurance, sick leave, all the standard stuff that you really have to do in a big corporation. Even in our business, those are requirements, and that's how we attract the best.
Why do you roast your own beans? What are some disadvantages and advantages of doing that?
Sure. You can certainly hire somebody to roast your coffee for you. And in our case, we wanted ultimate control over the process, the quality, and consistency. And we can do that with our own coffee beans coming from specific countries, and then how we control the roasting process is really important because we want to know that the process is done correctly, that it's fresh, and that it's done in the way that we want it to be done. So that's why we roast our own coffee. We didn't originally. That was a process that we had outsourced in the beginning years, but eventually we were able to bring it in-house and roast all of our own coffee. And that's been a huge advantage for us.
What's the initial cost of the setup for a roastery? Well, let's just focus on this one. Obviously, it's on a bigger scale, but...
Well, I can give you kind of a broad definition. This is a very expensive setup. You can start out probably with less than $10,000 and have a roasting machine and do very small batches. Of course, you can even get down to some really, really small numbers and do air pop type roasters and things like that. But yeah, when you're getting into these type of things, you're talking about $250,000 to set something like this up, make it work efficiently. You can see the way that we've done this. This is a very lean process. So you can take one person who is actually loading in all the coffee and then roasting it, and then it goes into a weigh fill machine that then is bagged and then set on the shelf. So it's extremely efficient.
2 to 3 steps, it looks like.
Yep.
Not much going on.
Yep.
A lot of businesses, when they start out, they have a difficult time turning a profit, right? Tell us a little bit about how long it took you to turn a profit, whether that includes you starting to pay yourself.
Sure. In our case, it took till year 1 until we actually went from red to black. And we'd planned for that. But what you also have to understand is that we took a little diversion in the first year. And that was, we opened store number 1, and 6 months later we opened store number 2. So it wasn't like it was just, routine, we're gonna run one store, see how it goes. We threw another bump in the road because we decided, we're going to put another store in the same town, a small town that was only 6,000 people, Linden, and we were going to, from most people's perspective, just split the town in half. Half would go this way and half would go this way, versus all of them going one way. And,
was that part of your original business plan?
It was not. No, it kind of fell in our laps. Starbucks had a hold on a property that we ended up taking as store number 2. And when they released it, then we said, well, if they released it, then it must be gold for us. And it was great. I mean, it was the right move at the right time, and it did exactly what we wanted it to do, which was show people that we were actually doing something significant and that they get excited about what we're doing. And so both stores rose in that time and both got busy.
Talk to us a little bit about your type of marketing. How much percentage you spend in marketing? What kind? Walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, we actually don't spend a lot of money in marketing. We do, it's changed over time, right?
Okay.
So when we first started, we were really looking at what are other people doing, how are they marketing themselves, and we realized that we didn't need to do a lot of marketing. We didn't need to, put advertisements in the newspaper. That was a thing back then, 18 years ago, and there was no social media. Which is almost like a free vehicle.
Right.
But we didn't have any of that. There was no Facebook. There was no website that you could, put up and people would understand what you're doing. So we actually realized that the best form of advertising for us was putting multiple locations within a certain geographic territory.
Interesting.
And so that became our advertising, and our budget was putting a new store. So it's expensive. We put a lot of money into that. But true marketing budget, we did not put a lot of money into that. I think in the early days, we were running somewhere between 1% and 2%. And in terms of marketing, social media is big for us. We're pretty dominant in our space in this area on social media. And that's been a lot of fun. It's a great vehicle for us to kind of show some of our creativity and then have people understand who we are and what we offer.
Well, there you go, guys. That is the end of our first episode of interviewing Wes Herman, owner of Woods Coffee. We want you to come back and watch episode number 2. We're going to talk about scaling your business. We're going to talk about your growth strategy, how to be competitive and setting the right goals to succeed. Thank you for watching. Please hit that bell, comment, ask questions below, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.